this, then you'll say we're not talking about this, or this, we're talking about this!
Are we rushing in, or are we going sneaky-beaky like?
Do you like operating harder than the SAS? Do you like popping heads from across the board? Do you like shooting troops, medics, and leaders alike? Well, if you haven't read the title of this video yet, let me show you the best troops choice for your 30k Legion, and I'm gonna prove it. My name is Mechanid. Let's get started. 2 words. Recon Marines. These guys are great. First, some lore. These guys are the eyes and ears of the Legion, experts in recon and scout operation. From sabotage and stealth to assassination and intel gathering. These guys are your go-to for forward deploying flexible operatives and getting the mission done. Got it? Good. Now, the stats. For 85 points, you get 5 lads with an extra attack and leadership on the Sarge. 4s across the board, normal Space Marine stat line, and 1 wound apiece. Comes with line and support squad. Keep this in mind, we'll come back to it later. They come stacked with loads of special rules. Scout for an extra 6-inch pre-game move, Infiltrate for flexible deployments, Skirmish +1 to cover saves and 3 inches of unit coherency. Now, the pros and cons. Cheapest line choice. At base, they are 15 points cheaper than a tactical squad. Also, with a 5-man minimum squad size, you can really make the most of those 40 model boxes to really stretch them out. Good for if you're on a budget or you are homeless. Comboing Infiltrate and Line lets you get onto objectives early and keep them. This is especially good for games where you have objectives outside of deployment zones in no man's land, letting you score early and dictate the flow of the game. Scout for an extra 6-inch pre-game move that makes them extra mobile and does not affect the first turn of shooting. Combining this with Infiltrate lets you get even closer to your objectives or reposition them to combat your opponent's early turn plays. Skirmish gives you +1 to cover save, and this really helps with the durability of the squad given that you don't have any access to a 2-up armor save. A unit coherency of 3 inches allows you to spread out more and better dodge blast templates. The whole unit can also take Nemesis bolters. More on these weapons later. Finally, Shroud bombs. The unit itself counts as 6 inches further away for the purposes of shooting and making them much more durable against close range weapons like bolters that normally rely on things like rapid fire to deal more damage. Also, they are harder to hit with barrage weapons, giving them more durability against weapons that are likely to be used to root out units camping in the backline or hard to reach areas. This effect also confers to any characters that are attached to the squad. However, it's not all upsides. Support squad. They need other non-support squad units to fill compulsory troops choices, or you need to take a specific Rite of War like a Recon company, which we will cover later. The lack of Artificer armor on the Sergeant means that anything with AP3 will mulch them, especially if they're not in cover. This means that you're going to have to stick to ruins and other pieces of terrain if you want them to survive. Low model and low wound count. Ooh. This, coupled with the fact that they don't get Heart of the Legion, means that any strong anti-infantry firepower and they will melt. Beware anything AP3 that ignores cover. The lack of Relentless means that any squads equipped with Nemesis bolters will lose a lot of firepower if they move. Be careful with your positioning, as you'll have to commit. They cannot deploy via Infiltrate if an attached character doesn't have Infiltrate as well. This limits which characters can be attached to the squad while maintaining their full flexibility. Finally, the unit can get very expensive very quickly, so be sure to consider what you are spending your points on, and it can be a serious points investment for low model and low wound count. Also, in my experience, they tend to be very swingy and may be less reliable than other choices such as tactical squads or breachers. They require commitment and a plan to use effectively. Wargear. Kit-wise, you've got some of the best options among troops choices. Can take bayonets on bolters. Regular or chain only do this if you like to eat glass, as it's likely you'll be able to buy something better for the point, like a pintle weapon for a vehicle or a piece of equipment. However, they are really cool. You can swap bolters for shotguns or chainswords for free. Take shotguns if you've got a plan, or swords if you're insane in a good way. Astartes shotguns have concussive, so don't underestimate the effect of you getting in close. Concussive allows a squad to punch far above their weight, but the fact that it requires your opponent to fail a roll makes this effect rather swingy. Nemesis bolters. For 10 points each, they are expensive, but worth it. Rending means these weapons hit like an absolute truck, and Sniper lets you put those rounds exactly where you want them to go. Armor. They can't take any armor upgrades. Dedicated transports. They can take a Rhino, more on Rhino tactics when that video drops, or a Storm Eagle. Normally I'd not recommend a transport for Recon Marines, as with Infiltrate and Scout, Recon Marines tend to be very mobile, and they don't struggle to get where they want to go, mainly because they can just start there. However, don't underestimate a vehicle's ability to body block or deny enemy line of sight and the additional firepower they bring. That being said, I wouldn't recommend a transport for Recon Marines unless you have a plan. Further upgrades. Additional Legionaries can be purchased for 12 points apiece. This cost can get pretty high, so watch out. Also, compare it to the cost of 17 points per model when you're considering buying an extra squad as opposed to increasing the model count in a previous squad. Melter Bombs. To combat vehicles or buildings. Only take this if you're going to be getting in close with shotguns or swords, otherwise they're probably going to be wasted. Also, remember that you cannot charge on the first turn after you have infiltrated. A Vexilla. Not good on a recon squad unless you're building around it and you expect to be in combat, you absolute mad lad. A Nuncio Vox. With Infiltrate, it's very easy to draw a line of sight to where you want to be dropping your scatter dice. For deep strike or a barrage attack. The Augury Scanner. This is really good and my personal favourite. Good on snipers, as it helps you dodge the night fighting restrictions on range limitations. Also, a free interceptor reaction with Nemesis Bolters is always good. Finally, if you're deploying first, you can use the Augury Scanner's denial range to help screen out areas of the midfield to prevent your opponent deploying infiltrators into them. This really gives the squad a lot of counterplay, especially against other infiltrators. Pistols for the Sergeant. Hand Flamers and Volkite Serpenter for close range only. I would recommend Plasma Pistols if you really want to take a pistol to help threaten 2+ armor save, but I find that these pistols are very overpriced and they're not really worth it, unless you're going to be throwing these guys in close, in which case you should probably take a close combat weapon for the Sergeant. I'd recommend something like a power weapon. A Power Fist or a Power Maul is going to really serve you well. Combi weapons. Not really worth it, especially when you compare it to a Nemesis Bolter. The extra flexibility is nice, but not when you compare it to the raw killing power of a Nemesis Bolter. Again, I would always think about what you actually want this unit to do and whether or not something like a plasma gun shot or a melter gun shot is going to be more effective than a sniper rifle round. Now, on to tactics, loadouts, and uses. First, a bare bones objective grabbers. Cheap and cheerful, no upgrades, 5 guys, camp and objective, sorted. The next, sappers. Using shotguns and melter bombs, maybe a combi weapon or power weapon on the Sarge if you've got the points to spare. This unit is here to suicide charge a vehicle or fortification, or punish an exposed artillery piece. Next, snipers. The classic Nemesis Bolter Augury Scanner combo to combat night fighting and to pick off characters and suppress heavy weapons teams. Finally, and a bit of a curveball, a harassing unit. Take chainswords or bolters with bayonets and either a Vexilla for better combat odds or an Augury Scanner to help screen out enemy forward deployers. Attack an exposed flank or even just tie up a gunline unit. Finally, consider your Rite of War. Recon Company is fantastic for Recon Marines. It removes their support squad, which means that you can take them as your compulsory troops and potentially have an entire platoon's worth of Marines infiltrating, which is something that I love to do. Next, consider what characters to potentially attach to the squad. Vigilators are always a good call. Any character with Infiltrate will naturally lend themselves well to the squad without impacting their flexibility. However, if you want more shooting damage and you don't mind losing Infiltrate, consider a Master of Signals or a Tech Marine and use their Cognis Signum for a boosted ballistic skill. Also, consider what Recon Marines bring to your Legion. Iron Warriors can make good use of Sapper-style Recon Marines, whilst Imperial Fists with their +1 to hit with bolt weapons, their snipers become especially deadly. In addition, Night Lords, Blood Angels, World Eaters, Space Wolves, etc., any melee legion, can make good use of the pinning effects of Nemesis Bolters to open up the way for melee units to close in. Finally, all legions can benefit from infiltrating line units, and the ability to threaten characters and important infantry models is always an upside. Next, let's compare these units. Compare with Legion Seekers if you're looking for snipers and assassins. If you're looking for snipers or a Nuncio Vox carrier, or as a suicide melter bomb rush, Legion Scouts are the cheaper option, but they are less durable with only a 4 armor save. Also, the Scouts lack line altogether. Compare with Legion Tacticals for objective grabbers. While Bare Bones Tacticals are 100 points compared to Bare Bones Recon at 85, you'll get more wounds and Heart of the Legion, and they're easier to build and buy en masse. Also, they don't require any support from things like Rites of War to get around a support squad rule. Next up, counterplay. When dealing with Legion Recon Marines, it's important to play around the range and beware of the return fire when shooting at them. The last thing you want is your own units getting pinned in your turn. You either have to get in close and engage in melee, but this can be hard due to them deploying in hard to reach areas. This makes units like Assault Marines really good at reaching and dealing with Recon Marines. Or you can shell them. However, this latter option can be tricky considering shroud bombs. Finally, with a low model count and a base of a 3-up armor save or maybe even a 4+ cover save, you can always resort to weight of fire and drown the units in cover. However, this is again easier said than done, due to needing to get in very close to trigger rapid fire special rules. Arguably, the best counter to Recon Marines is other Recon Marines with Nemesis bolters, and baiting out the opponent's return fire reaction so that you can get in without any fear of being shot. And finally, where to buy, convert, or use as other units. You can get specific Recon squads from Warhammer, but if you've got that sort of money, you don't need advice on where to buy. Personally, I customize the 40-man tactical box into a Recon squad or two, or any other Heresy era bodies will do. eBay, third-party minis, or 3D prints are always your friend. Recon Marines can also be used as Seekers or Veterans if they have similar weapons. In summary, if you are a based and red-pilled alpha male gamer like me, you will use Recon Marines. They're a strong unit with a low skill floor and a high skill ceiling, rewarding if you play into their strengths. They are surprisingly durable in cover and a flexible kit with more roles than you may initially think. Convinced? Good. If not, go back to the start and try again. Still here? Good. That means you're smart enough to hear me say, thanks for watching. This has been my first ever video on YouTube, so any feedback, please leave it in the comments. I'd love to hear what you'd say, and if there's any way I can improve, I'd love to hear it. I want to help people get into the hobby that I love so much by making unit reviews. My plan is to cover each of the units one at a time, starting with generic units and alternating to Legion-specific units, followed up by overviews and anything else that takes my fancy. There will be more to follow, so stay tuned, and I hope to see you in the next video. My name is Mechanid. Thanks for watching.
お帰りなさいませ、ご主人様。ウェコムトゥーザナイトカフェ。